Back in the 2010s, a friend I used to live with and I would spend our weekends looking for the goofiest horror movies to watch when we didn't want to go out that night. It was a pastime of ours. Normally, we ventured to Amazon Prime because they're kind of like the Wild West of streaming services. Anyone, and I do mean anyone, can upload a film to Amazon Prime. It's where I discovered such gems as Bad Ben and. Well, no, that's really the only so bad it's good horror film I found there. One night while mindlessly scrolling, we found the trailer for a movie called Hell House LLC. We watched it and were cracking up at just how dumb the movie looked. I saved it in my favorites and we had plans to revisit the film again another day. Eventually, we both went our separate ways and the movie was long since forgotten by me. That is, until lockdown in 2020. I had just started my podcast based on horror and was looking for something, anything really, to watch and review. To my surprise, I was scrolling through the list of movies I had saved on Amazon Prime for years and came across Hell House LLC again. I watched the trailer, got a good chuckle at it, and decided that was the movie I would review. I sat down one night, pulled the movie up on my TV, and immediately realized I had stumbled upon one of the best found footage horror movies ever made. I was so stunned by how good it was, I had to watch it again to confirm that it was an awesome film. Then I noticed there were two sequels, The Abaddon Hotel and Lake of Fire. I planned to watch and review those eventually, but never got around to it. After watching this movie, I was shocked that not many people seemed to talk about it. It barely showed up on lists about horror movies from the 2010s. It seemed like in horror spaces, only few people had even actually seen it. It was a true cult classic with some diehard fans spreading the word of how great these films are. Then, in recent years, I've seen more people talk about this movie. Even some content creators have brought up their love for this series recently. And word was starting to spread about how good the films were. All of this leading up to the release of the most recent film in the series, and the first film in years, Hell House LLC Origins: The Carmichael Manor. What a hell of a title. When that film was released, people went nuts over it, calling it one of the best films of 2023, probably in the top 10 at least. That pushed me enough to revisit the entire series, which is now on Shudder. I've watched all 4 of these films recently, and I've got to say, it's some of the best world building I've ever seen in recent horror. Even the weaker films in the series still have their purpose in the plot, which means you can't skip any of the films. So today, I'm going to run through the general plot of the story, explain the parts of the story that are a bit confusing, and also explain why these movies are incredibly good, all things considered. Of course, this is your spoiler warning. If you haven't seen these films, I urge you to check them out on Shudder before watching this video. But if you decide to proceed without seeing the films, just know that I will be talking about pretty much everything, including the endings of each one. Also, before we progress any further, consider subscribing, because I'm going to be doing quite a lot of videos like this throughout the coming months. So, without further ado, let's get into this creepy critique. As I stated before, there are 4 movies in the Hell House series. We have the original Hell House LLC, then Hell House LLC 2, The Abaddon Hotel, arguably the weakest one in the series, Hell House LLC 3, Lake of Fire, and finally, the most recent entry, Hell House LLC Origins: The Carmichael Manor. Now, I'm not going to go through every single film in excruciating detail, but I will go through the plot as thoroughly as I can. I'm going to take it movie by movie and fill in the blanks as we go along. Starting with the original Hell House movie, we center on a team of haunters who have settled on an abandoned hotel called the Abaddon as the location for their newest haunted house attraction. But as soon as the crew comes to check the place out, they're able to see just how creepy the hotel actually is. Undeterred by this fact, of course, they set up their haunt to open for the Halloween season to the citizens of Rockland County, New York. However, soon the group is plagued by creepy visions, nightmarish creatures, and of course, demonic activity. As an audience, we learned through documentary-style interviews with Abaddon historians that the man who owned this hotel was a man named Andrew Tully, and he was obsessed with finding the gates of hell. He did eventually give up his own life, but many believed him and his demon friends were still living it up in the hotel. The Hell House team, which is where the franchise gets its title from, doesn't really know or believe in any of this, until opening night of their haunted house when the demons make themselves known, slaughtering crew and patrons alike and making them permanent guests at the Abaddon Hotel. Hell House LLC 2 picks up where the first one left off in a sense. In this film, we're actually following 2 stories, one based around a talk show called Morning Mysteries, and another based around a pair of bloggers who received a mysterious tip about the Abaddon Hotel and want to go looking for answers as to what happened. On the Morning Mysteries TV show, the host has a group of people on to debate whether or not the original Hell House movie we watched, which was framed as a documentary, did more harm than good. After the documentaries released, many urban explorers started to go to the Abaddon only to go missing. On the panel, we have the police commissioner of Rockland County, the editor of the original Hell House documentary, and a psychic medium. Following the other group, they recruit the editor and the medium to come with them to Hell House to find the information that was teased in the tip they received. While they're successful in their mission and do end up finding the evidence they were looking for, they also meet the unruly ghosts of the Abaddon Hotel, somehow open the gate to hell, and are eventually killed just like everyone else who made it in there. This movie, however, adds some context to the lore of the first one. Andrew Tully was the leader of a satanic cult, and on that Halloween in the 80s, he led the cult to their final resting place in the Abaddon Hotel. And that sacrifice opened the gate to hell and let all the demons out to play. However, the hotel needed more souls. Since it was closed down and abandoned, that meant that Andrew Tully had to get creative with his recruitment measures. We'll discuss this more when we talk about the next movie, but in this movie, we find out that Andrew Tully's spirit is able to leave the Abaddon Hotel. We see this when it's revealed that the police commissioner on Morning Mysteries is actually Andrew Tully himself.
I just got a call from Arnold Tasselman.
Yeah, he just left. What did he forget?
That's the weird thing. He called to apologize that he missed the interview. He said he was in a minor accident on the way here, and he's sorry that he missed it. He couldn't call until now.
He takes the blog team and chooses one to release back out in the world to get more souls back to the Abaddon Hotel. This is revealed when Jessica, the main blogger we've been following, reveals an evil face to the audience during a police interview before encouraging them to go into the Abaddon and see for themselves what happened. At the end of the movie, it's revealed to us that the tapes we've been watching are in the possession of Russell Wynn. Who's Russell Wynn? I'm glad you asked. Hell House LLC 3 introduces us to the character of Russell Wynn officially. He's an eccentric billionaire who has just purchased the Abaddon Hotel to put on his interactive play Insomnia, a retelling of the story of Faust. In the third movie, we're back following the new host of Morning Mysteries as she and her cameraman document the journey of Russell and the cast and crew of his play. Throughout the film, I know I was truly confused as to why, if Russell Wynn was in possession of all these tapes showing just how evil the Abaddon and its patrons are, why would he buy this hotel to put on a show in it? It seems stupid and honestly dangerous for his entire team. However, as we go through the movie, we learn more about Andrew Tully and Russell Wynn. Andrews actually orchestrated the entire franchise. He was the one who basically helped the owner of Hell House, Alex, find the Abaddon and sink all of his funds into it, which helped feed the demons and launch this renewed interest in the Abaddon itself, bringing more and more souls in the building for the devil to collect. But throughout this entire franchise, Russell has also allegedly been there, lurking and listening to the conversations of certain film crews that entered the hotel, including the original Hell House crew. By the end of the third film, we see the demons rise up again to collect their quota of souls by slaughtering all the actors, crew, and audience of Insomnia. They even successfully kill our new Morning Mysteries host and her cameraman. That is, until Russell comes out and fights with Andrew Tully, throwing them both into the gate and closing it. At the end of the film, we see our crew from the first film in a sort of ghost state in the Abaddon, realizing they're actually dead. Russell then comes and tells them that he closed the gate so their souls can finally rest now. So, the implication by the end of the third movie is that Russell Wynn, who technically died in a motorcycle accident, was brought back by God to close the gate to hell and help all the souls trapped in the Abaddon Hotel rest in peace. The hotel burns to the ground, and the curse of the Abaddon Hotel is no more. But if that's the case, then how come in 2023 they made a fourth Hell House movie? The final Hell House so far does not focus on Hell House or the Abaddon Hotel, but instead on the Carmichael Manor, a manor that was owned by an extremely wealthy family who met a terrible fate. After one of the daughters was killed in a car accident, the wife and other daughter were found slaughtered in their beds, while the father and son, Patrick Carmichael, went missing and were never seen again. In this film, we follow a ghost hunter named Margot, her girlfriend Rebecca, and her brother Chase as they stay in the Carmichael Manor in hopes to find any paranormal activity. It's implied that Margot experienced a massive amount of trauma when she was a child at a local carnival, though that trauma is never explicitly stated. This led to her fascination with the paranormal and eventually led her to Carmichael Manor. While staying there, they find a room that is filled with old artifacts from the Carmichaels, including two ugly-ass clown mannequins. Eventually, Margot and Rebecca go antique shopping in town and find a clock from the Abaddon that has a secret compartment filled with a ton of old film reels and photographs. But, oddly enough, none of the stuff belonged to Andrew Tully or even the owners of Hell House. Instead, all of this stuff belonged to the Carmichael family. You see, I didn't mention this, but back in the second movie, Patrick was introduced as an employee of the Abaddon Hotel and a member of its cult. Patrick was the only member who did not make the sacrifice because he was in jail for getting into a fight with someone at a bar. In Origins, we learned that Patrick was traumatized by the death of his sister Margaret, who died on the way home from an audition in the city that he was driving her to. Because of this, it's assumed that he got in deeper with the cult and was asked to be the only member who survived for very important reasons. You see, I haven't mentioned this yet, but a prominent antagonist and sort of an icon for the Hell House franchise is a clown we see in every film wearing black and white. He's definitely very creepy and has the most amazing scares throughout the series, but not much is known about this clown. However, the two clowns we see in the Carmichael Manor look very similar to this clown, and we do eventually learn that these two clowns owned a traveling circus that Andrew Tully became involved in. They also ended up becoming members of the cult as well. This stuff was brought to the Carmichael Manor by Patrick to hide it from the police. By the end of the film, we see that the Carmichaels were victims of the demons summoned by this cult. And then we learn that Patrick is the one who donned the costume of the black and white clown by a reveal at the end of the movie showing him standing in the suit and mask, looking at the camera in front of the basement stairs, much like he had in the first Hell House movie. Oh, and as for Margot, her girlfriend, and her brother, yeah, they didn't make it out of Carmichael Manor alive. So, to summarize, Andrew Tully was a cult leader who built the Abaddon Hotel because he wanted to open the gate to hell. He and his cultists sacrificed themselves in the 80s in the hotel, which made the ritual successful and made the Abaddon the hub for demonic activity. Patrick was asked to stay behind for reasons unknown and donned a clown suit that became the bane of every character's existence in this franchise. After the sacrifice was made, however, no new guests were coming to the hotel. So, to combat this, Andrew went and began talking to Alex, the owner of a haunted house attraction, and got him to set up shop in the Abaddon Hotel, not only bringing the souls of the crew, but the cast and the patrons as well. After Hell House's tragedy, a documentary crew made a film about it, which enticed people to start going inside, feeding more souls to the demons that lurk within the walls. To gather more guests, Tully sent a clue to Jessica and Molly, the bloggers in the second movie, to get them to come and search the hotel for more information regarding the deaths of the cult members and their leader. However, once the team is in there, they are slaughtered by the demons, and only Jessica is allowed to leave, although in a possessed state. The tapes from this ordeal are in the custody of Russell Wynn, a billionaire with an interest in the Abaddon Hotel. He purchases the hotel to put on his play, Insomnia, bringing a bevy of souls to the gates of hell. But it's all really a trap for Andrew Tully. Russell sacrifices his soul, which has been touched by God, to close the gate, burn down the hotel, and save those involved with Insomnia and the documentary centered around it. He also helps the souls of those who were trapped in the Abaddon Hotel rest. The Abaddon has been burnt down, but given the events in Carmichael Manor, the demons are still around because the soul of Patrick somehow escaped untouched. So now that you have a general idea of how this franchise works, let's talk about some things that I found within the series that leave me scratching my head. The biggest one is the black and white clown. I don't know if the first Hell House movie was meant to spawn a franchise or not, but in the first movie, Alex and the Hell House team decide to put these creepy clowns in the basement, and one of them is the black and white clown, or Patrick, if you will. But they never show them finding the clown in the hotel, so it's assumed at the time of watching that the clown is a prop from the Hell House collection, which would mean that the clown logically wouldn't be possessed by anybody. While I think the inclusion of the clown within the cult's lore is awesome, it seems more like the clown became iconic within the fandom, so they gave him a backstory. It's just that the backstory doesn't make much sense when you stop to think about it for too long. There's also this scene in Carmichael Manor where we see a photo of young Margot at the carnival she was traumatized at, and we get the reveal that Patrick was also there, and I'm sorry, there's like sirens going off outside, and that just totally threw me off my game. So, like, it's basically revealed that Patrick is there, but while logistically that would make sense, it also doesn't because it's never explained that Patrick also worked at the carnival at the same time as working at the hotel. That's just me being nitpicky, although there's another, like, theory I have is that the clown that Margot encountered at the carnival was actually Andrew Tully. I don't know if any of this has been confirmed. I did not do any research to find out if any of this has been confirmed. But I have a theory that that clown is Andrew Tully, and that the clown, obviously, that we see throughout the series is possessed by both Patrick and Andrew. But I could be wrong about that. I could just be throwing stones at something to make it make sense. But they never mentioned that Patrick worked at a carnival, so it doesn't make sense as to why he would be at that carnival. It just doesn't make sense. Another thing has to do solely with a big point of the second film, the reveal of Andrew Tully as the police commissioner on Morning Mysteries. Tully's goal is to bring more souls into the hotel so that the demons can feast on them. So why would he then go on a televised talk show and dissuade people from going there? The whole angle of the police commissioner is that he's pissed off that the documentary has caused them to have to increase the police presence so that people will stop going missing. And if you look, there is an increased police presence throughout the earlier parts of the second film. I get that that's probably what the commissioner was going to talk about, but it just doesn't make sense at the end of the day that Tully would disguise himself as someone who doesn't want people to come to the hotel when the majority of his actions throughout the series show otherwise. I'm not sure what the purpose was except for maybe letting the audience know that he can leave the hotel, as it contradicts his entire character's motivations. Finally, my biggest complaint is the characters themselves. I personally find found footage movies to be a bit of a slog to get through because most of the time it's just a bunch of characters arguing and doing stupid stuff. So the genre overall has never really been for me. And while I love this franchise and the movies, the characters are incredibly frustrating to watch. I gave a lot of grace to the characters in the first entry. For the most part, they were just trying to do a job and were so financially tied to the Abaddon that their willingness to stay made a lot of sense. I'll even give grace to the characters in the third movie as well, seeing as Russell needed his plan to go off without a hitch so that he could close the gate. Without the involvement of those there, he wouldn't have been able to run Insomnia, and the demons would not have attacked, leaving him the opportunity to end Abaddon's reign of terror. However, the second and fourth movies are fair game because these characters are dumb as hell. The second movie, we watched the editor from the first film, Mitchell Cavanaugh, tell the host of Morning Mysteries that he will never go inside the Abaddon Hotel after what he saw. Yet the second that the bloggers approach him to do so, he's there because he wants to know what happened to his friends who were killed at the end of the first movie. Jessica, who is one of the bloggers, takes the bait immediately with the clue that she received and brings everyone to the hotel, only for everyone to be immediately captured and killed by demons. She's the only survivor, but she's barely that, as like I said, she's very obviously possessed at the end of the movie when she urges the police to go there. And then there's the motley crew of the fourth movie, Margot, Rebecca, and Chase. Even though the movie in itself is very well written and ties together the lore of this family and their connections to the Abaddon Hotel, these three stooges are a mess to watch. Mainly Margot with her insane pursuit to find out what's going on in the Carmichael Manor, all the way to the last moment she's alive. I mean, pretty much the moment she realizes she's gonna get got is when she finally drops the facade of ghost hunters. She puts her family at risk, ignores their discomfort and fear throughout the movie, all to get that one speck of proof that ghosts are real. And believe me, she got plenty of proof that ghosts were real throughout that movie before she even got to the point where things really hit the fan. I know that's literally the point of her character, but it doesn't make her likable at all. I also think it's just the way she's characterized. She doesn't seem fazed by anything until the end, and then the constant refrain of get the camera every time something happens, it's just exhausting to watch. By the time Margot is dispatched, I was pretty much relieved to see her go. The characters in these films are nosy, impatient, and completely unaware of how dangerous what they're doing is. And while it's part of the story and does make the film more interesting, it's also very hard to watch these characters continually do stupid things in the face of true evil. But while these movies have some things worthy of criticism, overall the four films are pretty solid. And I would have to argue that's because of two things: the world building and the scares. I haven't seen a modern day horror movie connect their worlds so well that they really only have two major plot holes I'm concerned about. Now, it's not necessary to watch the sequels if you've only seen the first one and are satisfied with what they put out there. I mean, that's how I was. It took me I just watched Lake of Fire and Abaddon Hotel this year because I wanted to watch Carmichael Manor. And that's only because people said it was really good, which it was. So yeah, you don't really need to watch the other three really, but if you want to see the newer one, definitely you gotta watch the other ones, otherwise you'll have no idea what's going on. If you end up watching one sequel, you have to kind of watch them all, as each one adds another piece to the puzzle that you may have been missing before. And personally, I think you should watch this entire franchise because it tells a really cohesive story throughout. Because it's done in a documentary style, it gives them the chance to fill in the gaps pretty easily, and it doesn't feel like it's force-feeding you information because, well, I mean, that's what they do in documentaries. They force feed you information. The design of all the monsters stay consistent. The black and white clown's costume never changes. The creepy girl in the white dress has the same makeup throughout. The demons still wear their cloaks and skull masks. I don't know if they're actually wearing skull masks, but it really does look like they're wearing skull masks. Even the OG Hell House crew is still seen in the film wearing what they wore when they died. The continuity is impeccable for the most part. It's a story that it's very easy to follow, and it even feels like it could be real in some cases. Well, aside from the cheesy special effects. Overall, the story of the Abaddon Hotel, its cult, and the unfortunate victims of it is simple, solid, and creepy, which is something that even films with a massive budget struggle to accomplish. The other thing that makes these films so fantastic are the scares. While some might argue the majority of their scares are predictable for found footage horror movies, there are quite a few moments that are standouts within this franchise that I'd like to look at, starting with the first movie. So what hooked me about the first Hell House LLC film was the beginning. As someone who loves going into haunted houses and looks forward to spooky season for this reason alone, the idea that something could go terribly wrong while you're inside one doesn't escape me. This movie taps into that fear pretty intensely. The opening of this film covers the tragedy that happened during that night during the grand opening of the Hell House haunt, but without showing you any of the demonic activity that we get to see in the ending. But it doesn't need it. The moment our videographer gets to the basement stairs and we see the panicked look on the patrons' faces as people are pushing to get back up the stairs, seeing people running, screaming in real terror as they trip over props and set pieces trying to find an exit, just the chaos of this entire scenario had me in stunned silence the first time I watched this movie. Sure, the reason for all of this commotion is demons, but this is a very real situation that can and probably has happened somewhere. And that fear of being in a place designed to evoke terror and then facing something that is actually terrifying and dangerous still strikes a chord with me every time I watch this film. I'm not even joking. I have seen Hell House LLC probably in the double digits now since I watched it back in 2020. It's a must watch during Halloween time. The opening sequence still leaves me a little bit breathless when I watch it because it's so scary. Not even what's actually going on, because I know what happens at the end of the movie. It just doesn't take away from the amazing opening sequence of this film. And honestly, I think it deserves to be included in the best horror openings of all time. I think it's up there. It's at least in the top 10. Another well-done scare in the first movie happens right before opening night. It occurs when our cameraman for the film, Paul, wakes up in the middle of the night hearing a noise in his room. When he turns on the light to his camera, we see a scarred, corpse-like looking woman in the corner of his room next to his bed. Paul doesn't see this woman. Only we, the audience, do. It's not presented as a jump scare. It has that genuine moment of, "Oh, dude, don't look behind you," before he moves the camera, looks behind him, and spots her. Then he hides the camera, and probably himself, under the covers as he plays peekaboo with this terrifying ghost woman until she gets closer to the bed and the camera glitches out. This scene is so tense, and the first time I watched it, I was on the edge of my seat the entire time watching her and wondering what her next move would be. So creepy. Before we go on to the scares of the second movie, I'll give an honorable mention to the scene where we first see the black and white clown in action. Paul walks through the house making jokes at all of the props until he makes his way towards the basement where our friend Patrick is standing staring down the stairs. Paul turns the camera to look downstairs to see what the clown's staring at before turning the camera back to him and seeing the clown staring at him. Paul, of course, writes this off as one of the guys from Hell House in costume antagonizing him, but when he returns to the main room and sees everyone accounted for, the true fear starts to set in. So for the next 3 movies, I'm only going to pick one scare from each of them. Not that they don't have many, but this is a very long video already, so I need to wrap this up. So for the Abaddon Hotel, the best scare is sort of reminiscent of the one with Paul in the first movie. While our crew of bloggers is in the hotel, they run into the same woman Paul was terrorized by. They try evading her, but she continues her pursuit of them throughout the hotel until they barricade themselves in one of the bedrooms. For a while, they're trapped in there, not knowing what to do next. Eventually, the lights on the camera go out, and one of the girls goes missing. When they finally get the camera on, Jessica and Mitchell are discussing what happened in the darkness, but behind them, the door to the room is open with the dresser pushed out of the way, and you can see the face of the spirit who is chasing them lingering in the doorway. Again, it's a subtle scare that gives you the anxiety of seeing what happens when the crew turns around. Fortunately for them, this spirit vanishes by the time they pick up the camera and head for the exit. It's a solid moment that made me go, "Oh, hell no," the first time I watched this film, though. That was a definite no for me. The third film is a hard one for me to find any standout scares. Like I said, I think that this is one of the weaker movies of the franchise. I think what this movie makes up for in storytelling and world building, it severely lacks in standout scares. I would probably say the scariest moment to me in this movie is the part where a makeup artist sees Sarah, the girlfriend of Alex from the first one, who also perished in the hotel, standing at the end of a hallway before she begins walking towards her. It's not really scary, but it's a standout because the makeup artist promptly quits the show that day and goes home. At least that's what we're led to believe. But the fourth installment has no shortage of scares. I can think of several moments that were jump scare inducing. Like, let's just first of all give like a big shout out to the scene with Margaret in the hallway. If you haven't seen this movie, there's a part where Chase, the brother, is walking through the hallway by himself, but he's at the house by himself. And he's walking through a hallway and he hears a noise down the other side. And all you see is something against the wall, and you don't really know what it is until it moves, and you realize it's an arm that's like against the wall, and the person's like arm is around the wall, and the arm is slinking back. And then the specter sticks their head around the corner and they're wearing like this white mask, and at that time you actually don't know, but it is Margaret, the eldest daughter who died in a car crash. It is the ghost of Margaret, but it was so well done because it's just such a long shot. Like, it takes forever to get to the point where she actually peeks her head out, and it just builds that tension. And when she finally peeks her head around, you're like, why are you still standing there, dude? Run. So that's a really good scare. I didn't add that in this, but I just thought it was important to bring that one up. But I would say there's no sequence in this movie, in my personal opinion, that is as amazing as the Zoom call meeting moment. And I honestly have to say this is probably one of the best scares in the entire franchise. It's established early on that Rebecca, Margot's girlfriend, is starting a new job as a real estate agent and is super anxious about losing the job, as that's their only source of income. She ends up having a meeting where she shows the listings to her manager over Zoom that she found, and the footage is framed as a screen capture from. In the first round of photos, we're looking at a bunch of fixer-uppers before photos of the Abaddon Hotel begin to take over the screen. Of course, neither Rebecca nor her boss notices this, but when Rebecca opens another file to show her a different house, she realizes quickly that the photos in this folder are of the Carmichael Manor. As the boss mentions that this house is too nice to be a fixer-upper, Rebecca begins frantically scrolling through the pictures until she gets to a photo taken of her at that exact moment with her back to the camera. She turns to look but sees no one behind her. As she hesitantly clicks the next photo, we see one of the Carmichael daughters standing beside Rebecca. The next photo, she's looking at her, and then in the final photo, the young girl is crouched beside Rebecca's face, screaming at her. This moment made me jump out of my skin. It does a wonderful job at building suspense throughout the entire scene that makes that final jump scare completely worth it. Like, it's so predictable. It's such a predictable jump scare once you get to that point where you see that the photo is being taken of Rebecca behind her, you know that like this is like a jump scare coming up. You know that. But it's so tense. Like, the way it lingers on photos, the look on both Rebecca and her boss's face as they're like uncovering what happens, the look of pure terror on Rebecca's face when she sees the photo of the ghost standing next to her and getting closer. It is so good. It is so good. Like, that's jump scare. It got me so good the first time. I literally like jumped like a foot from the couch. I was like, holy crap, and like almost flew back. So good. Like I said, the fourth entry into this franchise has a lot of incredibly good scares, but this one is the chef's kiss moment of the entire franchise. The thing about the Hell House LLC franchise is that it's just plain fun. Pretty much every entry has some solid jump scares. They capture the atmosphere of walking through a haunted house, especially in the first and third ones, super well. A lot of the shots reminded me of the POV walkthroughs of Halloween Horror Nights that I watched during the season. And it has a pretty solid story that very rarely contradicts itself, in my opinion. It's crazy how a movie I once had on my list to make fun of and laugh at with an old friend on a Saturday night when we didn't feel like going out has become one of my all-time favorite horror movie franchises. It's a true hidden gem, and although it's gotten a lot more recognition over the past few years within the horror community, it manages to do all of that without being controversial or evoking any anger. Well, except from religious folks, but I doubt any of them would watch a movie like this in the first place. I also want to point out, I'm going a little bit off script here, but I also want to point out that I don't really like demonic possession movies. I really don't. I really don't. Like, not for religious reasons. I just find them to be very repetitive and pedantic, and most of the time it's just like an excuse to watch somebody break their back and crawl on the ceiling. This movie took the idea of like demonic activity and demonic possession and gave it something original for the time that it came out. I think this movie came out during a time when like the craze of making these types of movies was just really starting. And of course it got buried because it's an indie film. It got buried under like bigger films like The Devil Inside, The Last Exorcism, and like many other films of that nature. And of course one that we'll talk about in another time, but it got buried under a lot of movies like that. And I think that that definitely affected people's interest in it. But I think out of a lot of the demonic possession or demonic activity movies, if you're into stuff like that, I mean, I'm not really, but like if you're into stuff like that, this is probably one of the best ones. I mean, I can't really say anything else about this franchise other than it is a really solid story. It's really well done. And if they decide to do any more, I'm down to see what other stories they can pull out because it seems like they're pretty consistent on giving us some solid stories. All in all, Hell House LLC is a buried treasure trove amongst a sea of subpar horror flicks, especially in the found footage genre. Side note, I have a similar video coming out about a very popular found footage franchise soon, and one that I believe buried this one. I'm super glad that the goofy trailer of the first one led me to discovering this incredible series. And with that, I'm going to wrap this video up. Thank you so much for watching. You can find me on any of the socials on the screen, and again, subscribe if you want to see more content like this one, because I'm going to have a video hopefully releasing every single week going forward from here. So, again, I'm Shay, and this has been A Creepy Critique.